back, everybody. I'm Lizzy. You all know that. It is time for another episode of Self-Care Sunday. I'm having a really good time with this Self-Care Sundays. It's a really great way to end one week and start the next. So thank you all for joining me, even if you're joining me later. Thank you for joining me. I just wanted to open up my Self-Care Sundays for everybody. If you have any topics that you're interested in seeing in the next couple of weeks for this Self-Care Sunday, definitely let me know. I also wanted to mention that for some reason on Instagram Live, if you're following me there, it does not save the comments that you post during the live, and it deletes all of them afterwards. So if you really want to make sure that I see them, make sure that you go back right afterwards. I'll post it and you can comment there and I'll see it. So that's how you can reach me. Otherwise, you can always send me a private message about what you would like to see in Self-Care Sundays. Welcome back. This is week 5, I believe. So we'll get started. I wanted to talk a little bit about our topic of the week. Okay, alright, let's start here. The topic of the week, we're going to be doing Mindfulness Matters, so stay tuned for that. But as usual, we're going to start with a virtue, and we're going to talk a little bit about the virtue from last week, if you were here last week. And I wanted to let you guys know why I include virtues practices in my self-care. That's what I wrote down. And I practice virtues in my self-care because I think that there's a lot of really good ways to go about virtues and self-care. But also I feel like it helps me become a better person to kind of focus on a different virtue every week and see how I can grow. And it can also help you realize where you may have some gaps in your character and in yourself, and also where your strengths are. So you can say, oh, practicing relaxation is really easy for me, and I can practice peace. I am very good at practicing peace. That's an example. That's not one of my strengths, in all honesty. Or you could say, I'm really good at patience, or I'm really good at honesty. You might also notice, oh, I have a really hard time being helpful or considerate, or, any of these other virtues. So it's a good way to kind of notice what are your strengths and how can you use them, and what are some of the areas of your life that you might want to focus on a little bit more so that you feel more comfortable in your practice of them. So last week we talked about compassion. So if you have any wins for compassion or any experiences with compassion and how that impacted you in your life this past week, drop them in the comments. I always love to hear it. I heard the phrase compassion fatigue this week in a video that I was listening to, and I thought that was a really interesting concept as well. The idea that you can go too far into compassion and caring about other people to the point where it just kind of like eats you from the inside out. And especially when there's so many things in our world for us to be compassionate about. This week I noticed that I wanted to be compassionate about so many things, and I almost had to stop myself, because if I fell too far into being compassionate about too many things, then my energy would just be too scattered and I wouldn't be able to do anything. So it's absolutely okay to choose where you give your compassion to. So that was last week's, was compassion, and then this week's virtue is confidence. And this is kind of a tricky one. I feel like a lot of people these days lack confidence, and that can come out in a couple different ways. It can, oddly enough, come out as you seeming overly confident because you're compensating for the amount of confidence, like self-confidence, that you have. And it can also appear as just a complete lack of confidence in oneself or others. So this section in confidence, it says, what is confidence? Confidence is being certain and feeling assurance. It comes from knowing and trusting someone. Self-confidence means that you trust yourself. You can do things without doubts holding you back. You know your strengths and weaknesses. When you are confident in others, you rely on them and trust them. Confidence is a sense of trust that the world is watching over you as you go through your life. Confidence brings peace of mind. When you are confident, you act with strength. You like to try new things. Confidence means that you don't allow fear or doubt to keep you from doing what you really want to do. And notice that it doesn't say that confidence is not having fears or doubts. It just means that you continue to do things and you have the confidence that they will be worthwhile despite your fears or doubts. With confidence, you feel certainty even when others try to confuse you or make you doubt. You do your best without worrying about what is going to happen. Instead of being afraid of failure, you have confidence that you can learn from your mistakes. When you have confidence, you trust that whatever comes into your life is a gift. We're going to move on to why practice confidence. When you have confidence, you try new things and learn all the time. Without confidence, fears and doubts would hold you back. You would worry. You would miss a lot because you were afraid of making a mistake, as if somehow mistakes mean that you aren't worthwhile. Without confidence, you feel confused or afraid of what might happen to you. Even if you know how to do something, your worries make you feel uncertain. Since you are worrying, you can't give things your best, and they do not work as well. Confidence gives you the ability to try new things and fail sometimes, knowing that you can learn from your mistakes. And then we're going to move on to, it gives a little bit about how you can practice confidence. It says, by knowing that you are worthwhile, whether you win or lose, succeed or fail. So that can help your confidence, knowing that you are worthwhile whether you win or lose, succeed or fail. And it also, another big portion of this is that you watch yourself without judging. You don't criticize yourself harshly when you do something you are sorry for or make a mistake. You do what you can to correct it. So that's interesting, because I feel like a lot of us have a tendency to really beat ourselves up and think that by being mean to ourselves, we can make ourselves a better person. Or maybe others, maybe being mean to others and thinking that that will make them a better person. But that's not how it works, really. Being kind to yourself is a lot harder and easier. So think about that when you're thinking about confidence this week. Some signs that you are practicing confidence is remembering that you are worthwhile whether you succeed or fail. You're willing to try new things. You discover your talents. You watch yourself without judging. You learn from your mistakes and you think positively. And the affirmation for this week is, I am confident. When I try something new, I give it my best effort. I am free of worry. I welcome new possibilities and trust the world to support me. So there's the affirmation for this week. And if you'd like to join me, you can think a little bit about confidence this week. Yeah. And then we'll move on to the mindfulness portion of this. I wanted to note, what does this say? Why is repetition of relaxation time important? The more that you practice relaxation, the more that becomes available to you and your body, and the more that you are able to kind of create that space for yourself more easily. So the more that you practice something, the easier it becomes. So if you practice relaxation techniques And that just happens to actually help you be relaxed, or if not that, at least give you space where you can start to learn about yourself and be curious about what might make you feel more grounded and centered and relaxed, then that is something that you are intentionally giving your time and brain space to, and it'll become more and more a daily way of living and being. So the more that you can practice these repetition of relaxation time, the better that your body will be able to do that throughout your life. And I don't know about you, but I would love to be more relaxed and more peaceful in my experience of life. So I wanted to talk a little bit about mindfulness today. If you already know what mindfulness is, that's great. If you have any other takes on what mindfulness is, feel free to leave them in the comments. But basically, mindfulness is the idea that you can intentionally find yourself in the present moment and experience where you are at in the present moment. And we can do that as a way to kind of prevent worrying about the future or rumination about the past. Because in my mind, I feel like a lot of the times depression is related to ruminating on the past and thinking about the past. I wish I could change the past, feeling kind of bogged down by that. And anxiety often comes with worrying about the future. What are things going to be like? What if this happens? What if that happens? So when you can take those things and remove the future and the past a little bit from where you're at, then you can really experience the current moment. And that's a lot easier said than done. So when we think about the way that we move through life, I personally at least have spent a lot of time thinking about the future and the past. I'm very rarely just sitting in the present moment. But the more that we can sit in the present moment and be non-judgmental, the more that we can find kind of even just like a calm view of the world, rather than the kind of heightened expression of, oh my gosh, the future or the past. So I think that mindfulness is really interesting in that way. There's this really cool picture that I saw on the internet, and it was mindfulness and then mindfulness. And the mindful was the two separate words, mind and full. And it had a little guy, a little stick figure, and he was thinking about all of these different things, and his mind had all of this stuff. And then he was walking his dog, and the little dog also had a thought bubble, and it was just the picture of them walking. It was the sun and the trees and the grass. So the guy wasn't even present at all, and I thought that was really interesting. So the idea of mindfulness is to kind of help bring us into the present moment. But how do we do that? Because that's the hard thing. Because if it was really easy, we would do it all the time, and we wouldn't have any issue with it. So the concepts of mindfulness can also really be integrated with something called grounding exercises or grounding techniques. And the idea of grounding techniques is to kind of bring you into your body and into the present moment. And there's something that you can consciously, intentionally do when you realize, oh, I'm not in that space right now and I want to be. So the grounding techniques that we're going to practice today, I've got a couple of them. You can use throughout the week, throughout your life, whatever you want to do with them. But there's a whole bunch of them online as well. So a really obvious example is if you feel yourself a really common one is if you feel yourself like you're going to go into a panic attack, right? Like that's a really obvious example of not being in the present moment because you are feeling everything and thinking everything. If you put an ice cube in your mouth, you can't focus on anything else because the ice cube is so intense of a sensory experience that it'll kind of I don't want to say shock, but it sort of does. It surprises you. It shocks you back into your current experience. So that's a really common example that people use. Another one that we can all do together right now is just, we've done this before in past videos, is a body scan. So we're going to start with a body scan today. So I want you to kind of start at your head and see, okay, how does my top of my head feel? How does my scalp feel? And then you can kind of go down, oh, how does my face feel? Are my eyes more relaxed? Are they open or closed? What do they feel like? Do they hurt? Are they okay? Are they really good today? And move down towards your jaw. Is your jaw relaxed? If you'd like to relax it, you can, if that feels good. If you prefer the tension, that is still an option. We're trying to be really non-judgmental. And then move down to your neck. How's your neck feeling? Your shoulders. Sometimes shrugging your shoulders or moving that part of your body can help you kind of really get into seeing how it feels. Does it feel tense? Does it feel relaxed? Does it feel kind of light? Does it feel heavy? And then move down into your chest, your lungs, feel your breath a little bit. And then move down into your stomach. Does it feel empty? Does it feel full? Is it moving? Is there some movement in your body that you are just kind of having happen? And then kind of down, you can go down into your arms a little bit, your elbows, your wrists, your hands. And then we'll move down into the hips area. How do your hips feel today? Your thighs. Down to the knees. The calves, the ankles, the feet, and the toes. And sometimes, if you don't have an area in your body that feels particularly really good, that's okay. Maybe find an area that feels neutral. And a lot of the times when we're trying to force ourselves to feel good, it doesn't work. And so if you can't find anything good, even if you're trying to find an area in your body that feels good, that's okay. That's just where your body's at. So maybe try to find an area that feels neutral. And if you can't find an area that feels neutral, then maybe find an area that just feels a little bit better than other places in your body. And just give that area a little bit of attention. Say thank you for doing your job. Because our bodies are really with us through everything. Even if it's really difficult to be in a body, they're doing their best and we're doing our best. And I have to believe that, even if it sometimes doesn't seem like that. So now that we've done a little bit of a body scan, I'd like to move on to some other grounding techniques. So the one that we talked about before was the ice cube in the mouth. That's a really obvious, or you can put an ice cube on your neck. That's a really obvious kind of quick version of bringing ourselves back into reality. But there's a lot of more gentle ways to do this as well. And these can be really good to use just anywhere in your life. Like maybe if you've got, I've got an interview or a big meeting. When you're waiting in the waiting room, that's a really good time to do these kind of grounding exercises and see where you are in your physical space. So one of my most favorite ones that I like to do is I don't know what it's actually called. I call it the rainbow. So the idea is that we're going to look around the room and we're going to find each color of the rainbow. And if you feel like you're really overwhelmed, sometimes you can say, okay, I'm going to find 3 things that are red and then 3 things that are orange. Or you can even do 5. So the more overwhelmed that you feel, sometimes it's easier to give yourself a longer amount of time to recenter and come back and be more grounded to where we are. So for today, we're just going to start with one. So I'd like you to find one thing in your space that is red. And you can either choose to find that with your eyes, you can choose to find it with your hands, like physically pick it up or touch it if you would like. Sometimes I find that wandering around the room and looking for things helps me feel more grounded because the physical movement feels good. But if that doesn't feel right, you can just look and find something that is red. And then once you've found something that is red in your environment, just take a second to look at it and kind of think about that red. Is it a dark red? Is it a bright red? How does that red feel in your vision? Does it feel like you like that kind of red? Do you not like that kind of red? And this is an extra step. Sometimes that feels overwhelming, so you can literally just find the color and move on to the next one. But for today, if we're in a relaxed state, it's easy to just take an extra second to kind of study what is that color on, what is the object that you're looking at. And then we're going to move on and find something that's orange. And you can look at the texture of the item too, if you find something that's orange. Some of them are way harder to find than others. I have a lot of color in my room, so it's a little bit easier for me. But sometimes if you have like a themed apartment, it can be kind of tricky to find that color. So really take that time if you need it. And then we'll move on and we'll find yellow. And if you find one really fast, maybe find another one. Look for something else that's yellow. And then we're gonna go for green. Do you see anything green? Maybe if you find it quickly, can you find something that's light green and something that's dark green? And if you happen to find a plant, I have a lot of plants in my room and they are green, and I'm just going to send a little love to my plants, just from my heart out to the plants. Feel that. Thank you, plants, for being there for me. And then we're going to move on to blue. And finally, purple. Can you find something purple in your space? Is it light purple? Is it dark purple? What is it? What is the object? What's it on? And again, we're doing this kind of without judgment, so we're gonna try to just sort of notice things. And if you find yourself falling into other thought patterns, that's okay. If you think, oh my gosh, I need to clean my room, it's so messy, I have stuff everywhere, like that's a really natural thought pattern to have. But if you find yourself doing that, it is a really good idea just to kind of bring yourself back. One thing that I like to do is I like to say, okay, I'm on purple right now. How many purple things can I find in my room as fast as I can? So I can see, oh, one, maybe two, and then, oh, there's a third one. And I can try to kind of rapid fire find everything that's purple. And then once you start to feel like you're back in the space of, oh, this is where I am right now, then that's what the grounding exercise is for. So now that we've gone through the entire rainbow, another way that we can do this is if you are not a super visual person. I'm a super visual person. I love looking at things and art and experiencing things visually. If you're not that kind of person, pick another sense. So one of the other things that we can do is go through our 5 senses. So let's start by finding 5 things that we can see. And that should be fairly easy if you have the ability to see things. If you don't, we'll move on to the next portion of this really quickly here. So take a look. What are 5 things that you can see? And these might be 5 of the same object. They might be 5 different objects. And you can just kind of say them to yourself. So I see a light switch. I see my bed. I see my water bottle. I see a book. And I see a stuffed animal. So those are 5 things that I can see. And then we're going to move on to 4 things that you can feel and touch. So an example might be, I can feel the cushion on this chair. I can feel my hair on my head. And you don't have to feel this with your fingers or your hands. You can feel other things. So I can feel that I have a blanket stuffed behind me on this chair, and I didn't even need to use my hands for that. I can feel it on my back. And one more. What else can I feel? I can feel the metal on my sweatpants. I think this is called an aglet. The end of the little string. I can feel that metal. So then, now that we have 4 things that we can feel, we'll move on to 3 things. What is it? We're going to do 3 things that we can hear. And I know it sounds silly, but sometimes I can't hear when I can see things. I can't hear and see at the same time sometimes. So if it helps to close your eyes, feel free to do so. And I'm going to go quiet here for a minute, and we're just going to find 3 things that we can hear. And if you're in a really quiet space, that can take some effort. But you can even notice things like I can hear my own breath. Or maybe you can hear your own ears ringing. That's okay too. All of that counts. And then the last 2 things that we're going to do are, I would say, like quite a bit more tricky. So 2 things that you can smell. And I personally don't have a great sense of smell. So if you need to use other things like essential oils or just whatever you have on hand, it really doesn't matter, to get those sensory input, that's totally fine. So like, for example, I happen to have a bottle of vitamins. This is one thing that I can smell. What does that smell like? And maybe you can notice different smells within the same thing. So if you have something that smells kind of strongly like this, like I can smell something kind of fruity, but I can also smell the kind of like intense, more like orangey notes of it. And once you found 2 things that you can smell, and you could also choose 2 entirely different things if you wanted to smell 2 essential oils or something cooking and something that you have. And then we're going to move on to 1 thing that you can taste. And you don't necessarily have to taste anything by putting it in your mouth if you don't have access to that, but a lot of people like to carry gum, they like to carry, a snack. And if you already naturally need that in your body, and once you start calming down, you realize, oh my gosh, I am really hungry now that I've smelled the things, and you can eat those snacks. If you don't have anything, you can also just notice, what does your mouth feel like and taste like right now? Another really good one is water. And we can go kind of beyond taste. We can go with temperature, like what temperature is the water? Is it warm? Is it cool? What does it feel like in your mouth? You know how different water has different tastes. Does it taste like your water from home? Does it taste like bottled water? Like, what does that taste like? So once we've done those kind of grounding exercises, I want you to do a little bit quicker of a version, but we're just going to do another body scan. So starting at our head. If you'd prefer to start at your feet, you can. I like to start at my head and scan down. Does your body feel any different? It's, again, no judgment. It's okay if it feels the same. It's okay if it feels different. And how does your space feel right now? Does it feel less overwhelming now that you've taken some time to look at it and see what it's like? Does it feel more overwhelming? That's okay too. Does it feel more calm? Does it feel more stressful? Does it feel... Sometimes I feel like we don't even realize that our space can feel kind of almost threatening. Not because it's actually threatening, but just because our body is feeling some sort of sensory input. Maybe it's holding tension and it's telling our brain. But now that we've kind of broken it down and looked at the different things that we have around our room, does it feel any different in the space that you're in? So those are some really good examples of grounding exercises. Some other really common ones that I see are things like yoga. I know that the idea of, oh, yoga's a cure for everything. It's not. Like, it's a great combination of physical movement, but also if you're doing something and you're on autopilot, then you're not experiencing it and you get quite a bit less of the benefits. And that's why the idea of yoga is so pushed, because it's a great combination of three things that have been shown to reduce stress and create more mindfulness, and those are movement, breath work, and mindfulness. So if you're interested in things like that, there's all kinds of yoga classes, places. There's no pressure to do that because you can do mindfulness throughout your life as well. So I'm going to start with those physical exercises that we did today. So that was the colors. We did the rainbow, finding each color in the room, and then we did the senses. So 5 of sight, 4 of touch, 3 of... What did I... 3... I always do this. I always forget the third one. Sight, touch... And then it was smell and taste. So what am I missing? I can't remember. Okay, I'm missing one. You guys probably know what it is, and you're probably like screaming it through the screen at me right now. But yeah, you can rewind and look it up if you want. So doing those exercises throughout the week and practicing confidence. I would love to hear how that goes. Again, it doesn't save any comments on the live, so feel free to comment them afterwards when I post this. I think that's everything that I have for mindfulness. If you have any other insights about mindfulness, definitely drop them in the comments once I post this. Thank you all so much for joining me for Self-Care Sunday. It was lovely for you all to be here with me, and it was lovely to take some time for ourselves. Next week, we're going to be talking about self-expression as a form of self-care, and I think we're going to do a little bit of kind of art journaling. So if you don't have access to any form of pens or markers or colored pencils or crayons, or like literally whatever you have is okay. You don't even need very many colors. You can do this with anything, but if you don't have access to that, now's a really great time to ask your friend, ask your neighbor. You can also reach out to me and I will help you find resources for that to prepare them for next week. That's everything I have for today. So, goodbye, as usual. I love you all. Have a wonderful evening.